Shabbat Shalom to those who are here and to those who are following our service online. Our service begins with the words of Bilam, who we will be hearing from later in our Torah portion, on page 74 of our Siddur, page 74. Ma tovu olecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu olecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael. Va'ani barov chastecha avor veitecha eshtachave el heichal kodshecha b'yiratecha. Adonai ahavti ma'on veitecha u'mukom mishkan kavodecha. Va'ani eshtachave ve'echra'a evracha lifnei Adonai osi. Va'ani tafilati lecha Adonai et ratzon. Elohim barov chastecha aneni be'emet yishecha. We read together. How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. I, through your abundant love, into your house. I bow down in awe at your holy temple. Adonai, I love your temple abode, the dwelling place of your glory. I will humbly bow down before Adonai, my Maker. And as for me, may my prayer come to you, Adonai, at a favorable time. O God, in your abundant faithfulness, answer me with your sure deliverance. On page 76. We give thanks for our bodies. And then on page 78, we give thanks for our souls. And part of our study session later is about this distinction between body and soul and how it affects the eco-crisis and how we handle it. And so we will read two prayers that really speak of a differentiation between the two. And as we do, ask yourself, where does the body go at the end of life, and where does the soul go at the end of life, and what does that mean to us? Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, rofecho basar u'mafli la'asot. On 78. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tahorahim. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tahorahim. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tahorahim. Atavratah, atayitzatah, atanafachta bi, v'atamashamra b'kibi, kol zaman shanashama b'kibi, modeh ani lefanecha, Adonai Elohai, v'Elohei avotai v'imotai. Ribon kol hamahasim, Adon kol hanashamot, Baruch atah Adonai, asher biyado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol b'saish. On page 80 and beyond, we find our prayers thanking God for the daily miracles in our lives. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasech v'bina lehavchin bein yom u'bein laila. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kufufim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, lokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, amechim et tzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ma bisharumi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, enoten liyahev koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ha'ma'avi sheina me'enai utnuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tselem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani bet chorim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozei Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Otei Yisrael betivara. If we have a minyan, we have a study passage at this time, and if we don't, we study our Torah portion, and so that's what we're going to do. Instead of having a study pause here, we instead continue with our liturgy, and we will study the Torah portion itself later. So I invite you to turn to page 105, and invite you to rise as you are able for Yishtabach, which leads us into Chatzi Kaddish and the start of our formal prayers with Baruch Hu. Yishtabach Shimcha Lahat Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh, B'Shamayim u'Va'aretz, Ki Lecha Na'eh Adonai Eloheinu, V'Elohei Avoteinu V'Imotenu. Shiru Shvacha Halel V'Zimra, Ozu Memshala, Netzach Gedula U'Gevura, Tehillah V'Tiferet, Kedusha U'Malchut, Barakot v'hoda'ot, me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai, El melech gadol b'tishbachot, El ha'oda'ot, Adon ha'nifla'ot, Aboche b'shirei zimra, Melech elchei olamim. Page 106. Yitkada v'yikada shemei rabbah, Ve'amad yivrach edutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayeducho beit Yisrael, b'gala, b'gala, u'v'zman kari, v'yimaru, Amen. Yehi shemei Rabba mevarach, la'alam u'la'almei ha'maya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishabach, V'yitbar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitada, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudesha, Berichu, Leila min kol bechata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Damiram B'yalma, V'yimaru, Amen. Those who are standing, please feel free to be seated as we turn to the middle of page 110 and read together. Praised are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai! In wisdom you formed them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMa'orot. And on 112. Ava Tanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chem Lagdola V'Teira, Chamot Aleinu, Bahavu Avoteinu, V'Himotenu, Shabbat Chuvacha, V'Tlamdem Chukei Chaim, Ken Tuchonenu Tlamdenu, Amrachem, Rachem Aleinu, V'Tem B'Libenu Lahavinu Lahaskil Lishmoa, Lilmod Ulelamed, Lishmo V'Lasot, Ukayem Et Kol Divrei, Talmud Toratecha B'Yahava, V'Ha'erinenu B'Toratecha, V'Dabek Leveinu B'Mitzvotecha, V'Yached Levaveinu, B'Yahava U'Yirat Shemecha, V'lo Nevosh, V'lo Nikalem, V'lo Nikashel, Le'olam Va'ed, Ki B'Shem Kodshecha, Hagadol V'Hanora B'Hatachnu, Nagila V'Nismacha, Nagila V'Nismacha, V'Shuatecha. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praise be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, Abocher ba'amo Yisrael, v'yahava. Either seated or standing according to your custom, together we recite Shema, which starts on page 114. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'adecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'v'lechtecha v'derech v'v'shochvacha v'kamecha v'kshartam le'ot ha'yadecha v'hayu le'totafot b'neinecha v'chatavtam ha'mezuzot beitecha v'visharecha 118 v'yomei Adonai al Moshe le'mo daber el b'nei Yisrael v'amata alehem v'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfei bigdeihem nedoratam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf etil techelet v'haya lachem letzitzit v'reitem oto v'zchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam v'lo taturu acharei levavechem v'acharei einechem asher etem zonim achareihem למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני Adonai Elohechem, Asher Hotzeiti Etchem, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Yihyot Lachem Lelohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Amen. We turn to page 121, to the middle of the page, and we read, The eternal truth is that you alone are God, and there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war any more. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart. The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God. We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy. Praise to God Most High. Blessed is God and deserving of blessing. Tefillah starts on page 124 with an opening reflection or meditation, a prayer that God may help us pray. We invite you to rise as you are able for our Tefillah. We're going to sing together that opening reflection meditation on page 124. And then we're going to continue our tefillah in our own quiet prayer. Quiet prayer means not silent prayer, but quiet enough that we may hear it, but the person next to us does not hear it. That's the volume tradition for quiet prayer. And we invite you to follow your own prayer, to weave your own tefillah of any of the prayers from page 124 to page 142. ratzon imre fi, regyan libi lefanecha, Adonai tzori v'goali. Oh, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. O say shalom bimroma, O yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael, ve'yimeru. Standing, please feel free to be seated. Our Torah portion is the portion of Balak. It can be found in the Plaut Chumash on page 1178. For those not in the Plaut Chumash, we're in Numbers chapter 24. And at the risk of repeating this morning's Torah study, I'm going to repeat this morning's Torah study. Bilam is a non-Jewish prophet who is seemingly well known. He's the go-to guy and if you want blessings or curse. He is a non-Jewish prophet. And Balak, the king of Moab, sees the Israelite army heading towards his land because they want to go through the land. But Balak panics and goes to Bilam, who pays him a very handsome wage to curse the Jewish people, the Israelite people. But Bilam's not able to do it because you can't curse that which is blessed. The Jewish people are protected in this Torah portion and beyond. They have a special relationship with God. It is seen from the theology of Torah, and therefore it's impossible to curse them. And it is interesting, it does say at the end of the Torah reading we're about to say, cursed are those who curse you. But how is that possible if they are blessed? It basically means those who falsely curse you, essentially, or those who try to curse you, but fail. And so we have this extraordinary, almost comedic scene with Balak and Bilam. And we shouldn't forget, this is what I didn't mention in Torah study this morning, so you get something different. We shouldn't forget the role of comedy in religious literature. Comedy is really important. If you don't think God has a sense of humor, look at the platypus. The idea of God laughs. God laughs with us sometimes. We even have this wonderful rabbinic commentary after the oven of Achnai and Talmud in tractate Bava Metzia, page 59b. Where the rabbis are arguing with one particular rabbi about whether or not Jewish law goes one way or the other, and a bat kol, a heavenly voice, descends and says the halakha follows him, and the rabbis say, actually, God, thanks for your vote, but you're outvoted by us, and you told us after the majority you should incline. In other words, you get one vote, God, just because you happen to be the creator of the universe. Actually, you still only count as one. And the commentary afterwards says, and what did God say at that point? And God laughs and says, my children have defeated me. Like, good job. That was brilliant. Well done. That was actually quite funny. I wasn't expecting that. So there is comedy, and I believe there's just as much as there is horror in the Bible, there's also comedy. And horror and comedy are actually very strongly connected. If you watch any good horror movie, it makes you laugh first, and then suddenly the horror happens. And that's quite deliberate, because both horror and comedy take us out of our normal existence, take us out of what's settled. That's why you have the three-legged stool concept in a joke. First you provide balance, and then you upset the balance. So in the British terminology, and apologies to anyone, in the British terminology, when three people walk into a bar, it's an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman. And what we say in England is always the Englishman and the Scotsman set up the joke, and the Irishman is the one who does something different. And so that's the point. Both comedy and horror take what is established, they make it normal, and then they subvert it. And so here, I believe this can be read as comedy. How do we know what's the lead into this? The lead into this story of Bilam is we first have the Moabite emissaries going to Bilam, and Bilam consulting with God and saying, well, you didn't get the message you want, so let's do it again tomorrow, which you could read as comedy. Eventually, God allows Bilam to go, and what happens? His donkey starts talking to him. Bilam strikes the donkey because the donkey sees the angel of death in front of him, but Bilam, whose eyes have not yet been opened, he's not yet fully aware, he doesn't see it. And so the donkey veers off, and he beats the donkey, and then this happens 3 times. And finally, the donkey turns around to him and says, "What are you doing? Have I mistreated you in any way in the past?" And it's at that point that Bilam realizes, oh, actually, the donkey's tried to save my life. The fact that you have a talking donkey in the middle of a perfectly respectable story about blessings and curses may well point to comedy. And so therefore, and I don't mean comedy lightly, I just want to be really clear on that. I think comedy, hence the phrase, many a true word was said in jest. Comedy can reveal something about us, the absurdity of the things we believe, and can take us to our limit and beyond and make us realize what our limits are. So similarly here, Balak hires Bilam to curse the Jewish people. So Bilam knows that he can't curse the Jewish people, but instead says, I will say whatever God puts in my mouth, which to Balak means is going to be a curse, but I think Bilam knows it isn't. And so you can almost imagine, you could set up the comedic scene. And Balak is like, here we go, here comes the curse, and out comes Bilam with the blessing, and you could see Balak sort of wither. You could stage this. You could put Balak on stage, and you could see him slowly wither in confusion, like, what are you doing kind of thing. And then what happens? It's almost like a Molière play of running around. Balak says, no, it can't be. You didn't curse the people, you blessed the people. Therefore, you must be standing in the wrong place. So let's relocate on stage and do it again. And they keep relocating in the hope that maybe they get the right place for the curse. So I've shared this not to make light of this story, but the other way round, to show, I think it may be, if you read it through a comedic reading, it may be absolutely mocking Balak and mocking the idea of God being inconsistent, mocking the idea that God might change according to time or place, and doing so through a comedic lens. One of the things that we think about sometimes is, what's the origin of Torah? Where did it come from? Was it gathered from stories around campfires? And if this were a campfire story, if you imagine you've got a whole group of kids sitting around the campfire, this makes for a great story, a great narrative around the campfire. You've got blessings and curses, you've got a talking donkey, and you've got a king, like the king who's meant to know what he's doing. The king running around going, no, do the curse over here, do the curse over here, it must be the wrong place, and so on. So I think this is actually quite an extraordinary narrative. And so reading it, we read it earlier this morning in a more serious lens through Martovu, and what does that mean? But I think taking an expansive view, looking at this Torah portion as comedy, and what does the comedy point out, I think gives us an extra element. We can find our Torah reading on page 1178. I'm going to chant the English trope, because that's the only one I know. The English trope from verses 1 to 9, page 1178 and 1179. But first we're going to say our blessing before study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר קדשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה. והיה בלעם כי טוב בעיני אדוני לברך את ישראל, ולא הלך כפעם בפעם לקראת נחשים, וישת אל המדבר פניו, ויישא בלעם את עיניו, והיה את ישראל שוכן לשבטיו, ותהיה עליו רוח אלוהים. ויישא משלו ויאמר נאום בלעם בנובו, ונאום הגבר שתום העין, נאום שומע אמריהם, אשר מחזה שדי יחזה, נופל וגלו עיניים. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, כי נחלים נתהיו כגנות עלינה, כאוהלים נטע אדוני, כארזים עלי מים. מים ידל היד, וזרעו במים רבים, וירום מאגג מלכו, ותינשא מלכותו, אל מוציאו ממצרים, כתועפות רעים לו, יאכל גויים צריו, ועצמותיהם יגרם וחיציו ימחץ, קרא שחר כארי, וכלבי מי יקימנו, מברכך ברוך, ואור ארדך ארוך. Now Balaam, seeing that it pleased God to bless Israel, did not, as on previous occasions, go in search of omens, but turned his face towards the wilderness. As Balaam looked up and saw Israel encamped tribe by tribe, the Spirit of God came upon him. Taking up his theme, he said, Nu'um Adonai, Nu'um Balaam, word of Balaam son of Beor, word of the man whose eye is true, word of him who hears God's speech, who beholds visions from the Almighty, prostrate, but with eyes unveiled. How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. Like palm groves that stretch out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the eternal, like cedars by the water. Their boughs drip with moisture, their roots have abundant water. Their king shall rise above Agag, their kingdom shall be exalted. God, who freed them from Egypt, is for them like the horns of the wild ox. They shall devour enemy nations, crush their bones and smash their arrows. They crouch, they lie down like a lion, like the king of beasts. Who dares rouse them? Blessed are they who bless you, and accursed are they who curse you. Our Haftarah for today can be found on page 1272 of the Plaut Chumash. It's Micah chapter 5 and chapter 6. We alluded to this right at the very end of our Torah study this morning. As the commentary says, Micah was a contemporary of Isaiah, late 8th century BCE. He witnessed the destruction of the northern kingdom, predicated a like fate for Judah and Jerusalem, unless the people and their leaders amended their sinful ways. Micah reminds his people of God's beneficences, that's a fascinating word, including his guidance of Balaam, who had come to curse Israel, and then this is the connection between the Haftarah and the Torah portion itself. What is required is not so much the bringing of sacrifices, rather a turning of the heart, only to do justice, goodness, and to walk modestly with your God. And as we saw in our Torah study this morning, there's a very important difference between Bilam and Micah. Bilam uses ma tovu, this phrase ma tovu, how good you are. In other words, you are inherently good, whereas Micah at the end of this haftarah uses it as an aspirational phrase, how good you need to be. The blessings before haftarah can be found on page 254 of the Siddur, and our haftarah is Micah chapter 5 verse 6 to chapter 6 verse 8, and I'll chant some of it in Hebrew and read the rest of it in English. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha b'nviim tovim, ratzav divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, havocheh b'torah u'v'Moshe avdo, v'Yisrael amo v'nbiei ha'emet b'tzedek. Page 1272. Vayasherit Yaakov bekerev amim rabim ketal mehet Adonai k'nevim alei eser asher lo yekaveh laish v'lo yachel livnei adam vayasherit Yaakov Bagoyim bekerev amim rabim ka'aryeh bevahamot ya'ar kichvi badedrei tzom asher imavav v'ramas b'taraf ve'ein matzil. Your hand shall prevail over your foes, and all your enemies shall be cut down. And that day, declares the Eternal, I will destroy the horses in your midst and wreck your chariots. I will destroy the cities of your land and demolish all your fortresses. I will destroy the sorcery you practice, and you shall have no more soothsayers. I will destroy your idols and the sacred pillars in your midst, and no more shall you bow down to the work of your hands. I will tear down the sacred posts in your midst and destroy your cities. In anger will I wreak retribution on the nations that have not obeyed. Hear what the Eternal is saying. Come present my case before the mountains, and let the hills hear you pleading. Hear, you mountains, the case of the Eternal, you firm foundations of the earth. For the Eternal has a case against God's people. God has a suit against Israel. My people, what wrong have I done you? What hardship have I caused you? Testify against me. In fact, I brought you up from the land of Egypt. I redeemed you from the house of bondage, and I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. My people, remember what Balak, king of Moab, plotted against you, and how Bilam, son of Beor, responded to him. Recall your passage from Shittim to Gilgal, and you will recognize the gracious acts of the Eternal. So with what shall I approach the Eternal, do homage to God on high? Shall I approach God with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Would the Eternal be pleased with thousands of rams, with myriads of streams of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for my sins? God has told you, human being, what is good, and what the Eternal requires of you, only to do justice, to love goodness, and to walk humbly, modestly with your God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzor kol haolamim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'mevoseh ha'mdaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nviim, ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך, מברכים אותך, יתברך שמך, בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה, אדוני,
Mekadesh HaShabbat.
As we return to our prayer, we read a prayer, two prayers that are not in the Siddur. We give thanks to you, eternal one, our God, for every single drop of rain which you have caused to fall upon us. Grant abundant water, for you are God who causes the wind to blow and the rain to fall. Grant it for a blessing and not for a curse, for life and not for death, for plenty and not for scarcity, and let us say, Amen. Eternal God, receive our prayers for the peace and security of the state of Israel and its people. Spread blessing upon the land and all who labor in its interest. Protect Israeli soldiers as they defend our people against missiles and hate. Protect the innocent among the Palestinian people that they might be safe and free from death and injury. Inspire Israel's leaders to both defend our people and to follow the ways of righteousness and compassion. Remove from the hearts of our people fear, hatred, malice, strife, and vengeance. May the Jewish people scattered throughout the earth stand strong in solidarity with the state of Israel in times of war and peace. May they be infused with the ancient hope of Zion. May our people be encouraged by the symbol of Jerusalem as the eternal city of peace. May the state of Israel be a blessing to all its inhabitants and to the Jewish people everywhere. May she be a light to the nations of the world. And let us say, we return to our Siddur on page 253. Page 253 as we think of those within our community and outside our community in need of healing, comfort and support at this time. Misheberach Avotenu Mekor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. We pray in particular at this time for comfort, for healing, and for support, for Gail Kaufman-Craven, Mick Brown, George Gollop, Jane Siegel, Nora Gluck, Carl Stalnacker, Ellen Lowenberg, Stephen Sherry Holland, Jan Simonoff, Frank Remmert, Barbara Meyer, Carol Rudman, Jane Hochberg, Carlos Villarreal, and Gary Polkowitz, as well as for Susan and Frank Sanansky, Leah Butgershon Vuudia, Jim Simmons, Catherine Werner, Adrian Gross, Sheila Stalder, Scott Lewis, Sophie Hochberg-Farrer, Ingrid Gustafsson, Jerry Steinberg, Faggy Marks, James Hetherington, Sandra Levine, Martha Ramirez, Cindy Pabst, Ann Lesa, Kathy Romero, Maria Romero, Marsha Landry, Carmen Rodriguez, and Jerry Newey Ho. And if there are others, if there's anyone here who knows of others in need of comfort, healing, and support at this time, please feel free to share their name out loud. Misheberach imotenu, Mekor habracha liavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We wish refuah shalema, complete and total healing to all those who we have named and to all those who we hold in our hearts. Before we start our concluding prayers, a couple of things to mention. After our service, we have a bit of a pause. We have, hopefully those who are staying have brought some kind of lunch. And then after lunch, we're going to be having the third of my sessions on reimagining Judaism and the environment. And this session is on theology and how theology is crucial, absolutely essential in terms of determining how we behave in this world. And how, in fact, for many decades, there have been those who have criticized biblical and what they call Judeo-Christian, even though I don't think such a thing exists, Judeo-Christian theology in terms of separating us from this world, by always seeking a God who is outside, or seeking a life in the world to come outside of this world. And there is some validity, I would say, to some of that criticism, although it tars Judaism with a rather large brush, which is not entirely fair. So we're going to look at Jewish theology and how it affects the way that we respond to eco-crisis. So we encourage you, if you're able to come and attend or to stay as you're able. Tomorrow evening, the Jerusalem Youth Chorus is performing at the Lenzik. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be there, but we really would like to have a very strong TBS presence at this concert. The Jerusalem Youth Chorus is a choral and dialogue program for Palestinian and Israeli youth in Jerusalem, and they're calling this US tour Faith Over Division. There are still some tickets available, I think not many. They can be purchased at the Lenzik website. We do encourage you to go. And on Saturday, July 27th, is that next Saturday? Yes, it is. Next Saturday after services, we'll be celebrating 10 years of me having been here, and we'll also be welcoming our new Director of Education, Brian Searle, with a potluck picnic at the Temple. And so we invite people to come to services, or not, at least come and join us for lunch. It's good to do both, I think. And join us, bring a potluck lunch, and we'll be having this picnic outside, hopefully. There'll be fun, relaxation, bit of dancing, there'll be music, and it's a nice little celebration and welcoming as well. It says refreshments provided. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that means drinks. Beverages are provided, not lunch. Bring your own lunch. And when it comes to potluck, it is really important that a potluck means bring enough for yourself and to share. That's really important. So that's different to a brown bag lunch after today's service, which is bring your own lunch, bring what you want. But a potluck is bring enough for yourself and to share so that everyone may have. We invite you to turn to page 283, 284, and 287. We invite you to rise as we start our concluding prayers with Aleinu. Ushamo, Ushamo, Ushamo Echad. Please be seated for a moment as we turn to page 294 and think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, as well as remember those who died at this season in years past, and also those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We remember in particular at this time Ted Hecht. And on their yahrzeits we remember my teacher, Rabbi Simon Francis, Donna Allen, Paula Belitzer, Roger Carassa, Pauline DeLuca, Blanche Goldberg, Sherry Goldstein, Ann Keller, Barta Kesselman, Maya Lefkowitz, Riette Muggleston, Arthur Pickard, Dorothy Regner, Anne Rauker, Carly Rogerso Selden, David Shapiro, Edward van der Veld, Eva Wall, Shirley Ward, Benjamin Weisberg, Richard Weiss, and Sanford Zimas. If there's anyone else here remembering anyone at this time, please feel free to rise and share their name. Invite the rest of the community to rise in support of our mourners, who on page 294 lead us by saying, Yit Gadal v'Yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah, Ba'ama Divra Chirutei, V'Yamlich Malchutei, V'Chayachon U'V'Yomechon, V'Chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael, V'Agala U'Bizman Kari V'imu, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach La'alam U'La'amei Almai, Yitbarach V'Yishtabach, V'Yitpa'ah V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh, V'Yithadar V'Yit'aleh V'Yithalal, Shemei D'Kudusha Berichu, Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Ta'amiran ba'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehi shalom rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'moma, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Please be seated. Osei shalom b'moma, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Zichronam livracha, the memory shall always be fragrant. We round off our service on page 321. Page 321, Adon Olam Hashem Alach. Adon Olam Hashem Alach, B'terem kol Yitzin Nivra, Li'et Nasa v'chevsa kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra. Adon Olam Hashem Alach, B'terem kol Yitzin Nivra, Li'et Nasa v'chevsa kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra. V'acharei kichlot hakol, Levado yimlach nora, V'hu haya v'hu hove, V'hu yehye b'tifara. Adon olam Hashem alach, B'terem kol yitzin nivra, Li'et nasa v'chevsa kol, Azai melech shemo nikra. V'hu echad v'ein sheni, L'hamchi lo l'hachbira, B'li reshit, B'li tachlit, B'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra. Adon olam Hashem alach, B'terem kol yitzin nivra, Li'et nasa v'chevsa kol, Azai melech shemo nikra. V'hu eli v'chai goali, V'tuchev li be'et sara, V'hu nisi umanus li, Menot kosi v'yom ekra. Adon olam Hashem alach, B'terem kol yitzin nivra, Li'et nasa v'chevsa kol, Azai melech shemo nikra. B'yado al kidruchi, V'yeti sham v'yahira, V'imruchi geviyati, Adonai li v'lo ira. Adon olam Hashem alach, B'terem kol yitzin nivra, Li'et nasa v'chevsa kol, Azai melech shemo nikra. Please rise as you are able for our concluding blessing. Yivarechenu Adonai v'yishmerenu. May God bless us and keep us. Ya'eh Adonai panav eleinu v'chunenu. God's face shine upon us and be gracious to us. Yisa Adonai panav eleinu, v'yasem lanu shalom. May God lift up the divine presence toward us and always grant us peace. Shabbat Shalom. We invite you to remain with us. One thing I realized, if you didn't bring a lunch, we're going to have a lot of leftover challah, so there is challah. Our Kiddush is on page 300.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת,
לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם.
כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת וקדשהו, סברי חברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ.
B'te'avon Shabbat Shalom. Yes.